The rancher did not know how long he knelt there, the wind combing through the tall grass and carrying with it the scent of dust and iron. The wounded native man lay still now, his breathing shallow but steadier than before. Every so often his fingers twitched, as if remembering something far away, another place, another time, before pain dragged him back. The rancher loosened his grip on the canteen only when he was certain the man would not choke, then slowly eased him onto his side. He tore another strip from his shirt, pressing it against the wound, feeling warm blood soak through his fingers. He had seen injuries before, broken legs from horses, gashes from barbed wire, but this was different. This wound spoke of violence, of pursuit, of a man who had run not for his life alone, but for something sacred enough to bleed for. The rancher's eyes lifted to the horizon. The land stretched empty in all directions, golden and silent, but silence out here could lie. He had lived long enough to know the prairie watched everything. Somewhere, someone else had passed through recently. Hoofprints marked the earth faintly, trampled grass bending in one direction, then another, as if a struggle had taken place before the wounded man collapsed. The rancher swallowed hard. Helping this man might bring trouble, serious trouble. Yet as he looked down at the bloodied face, sunburned and young, something inside him refused to turn away. He had buried his wife alone under that cottonwood tree years ago. He knew what it meant to be left helpless beneath an open sky. The wounded man stirred, his lips parting. A whisper escaped, broken and urgent words the rancher did not understand, but the fear in his voice needed no translation. The rancher leaned closer, speaking softly, the way he used to speak to frightened horses. "Easy now. You're safe. I've got water. I won't leave you." The man's eyes fluttered open, dark and sharp despite the pain. For a moment, those eyes locked onto the rancher's face with startling intensity. It was not gratitude there, it was warning. The man's hand weakly grasped the rancher's sleeve, fingers trembling as he forced out a single word in broken English, barely audible. "They're coming!" The wind shifted. The rancher felt it then. Not fear exactly, but awareness. He scanned the horizon again, his hand instinctively moving to the old rifle slung over his saddle. "Who's coming?" he asked, though he already sensed the answer would not bring comfort. The wounded man tried to sit up and cried out, collapsing back against the rancher's arm. Blood seeped faster now. The rancher cursed under his breath and tightened the cloth. "Don't move," he said firmly. "You won't make it if you do." The man's breathing grew erratic. His gaze shifted past the rancher, toward the far ridge, where dust now rose faintly into the sky. The rancher followed the man's stare, and his stomach tightened. Far off, barely visible, something moved against the sunlit hills. At first he thought it was cattle. Then the shapes sharpened, horses, many of them, too many to count from this distance. They were coming fast. The wounded man's grip returned, stronger now despite the pain. His voice was clearer, edged with urgency and something deeper, duty. "Tell my people," he gasped. "I tried." His head fell back, eyes rolling briefly before settling into a half-lidded stare. The rancher shook him gently. "Hey, stay with me. You hear me? You're not dying here." But even as he said it, he felt the truth pressing down like the coming thunder of hooves. Whatever this man had been running from was almost here. The rancher had a choice. He could mount his horse and ride hard, leaving the wounded stranger to whatever fate followed him. No one would blame him. Out here, survival came first. But his hands did not release the man. Instead, he moved quickly, lifting the wounded body with a grunt and dragging him toward a shallow depression between rocks. It wasn't much, but it was cover. He pressed the man low and whispered, "No matter what happens, don't move unless I say so." The man's eyes flickered, understanding passing through them like a dying flame. The sound came before the sight. A distant thunder, low and rhythmic, rolling across the land. The ground itself seemed to breathe with it. The rancher stood slowly, hands visible, heart pounding so loudly he was certain it could be heard. As the riders crested the ridge, the sun caught them fully, and his breath caught in his throat. This was no small group of pursuers. This was an entire tribe. Men, women, warriors painted and armed, elders riding with dignity, banners fluttering in the wind, hundreds of them pouring over the land like a living river on horseback. They did not charge blindly. They slowed as they approached, spreading wide, encircling the area with practiced precision. Dust hung heavy in the air, and the rancher stood alone at the center of it, a solitary figure against an unstoppable force. His hand hovered near his rifle, then fell away. Drawing it would be suicide, and somehow he knew it would be wrong. He raised both hands instead, palms open. The riders stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than the thunder before it. One rider moved forward, older than the rest, his posture calm, his gaze sharp. He studied the rancher for a long moment, then looked past him, his eyes narrowing. He spoke in a language the rancher did not know, his voice carrying authority. Immediately, several riders dismounted and moved toward the rocks. The rancher took a step forward instinctively. "I gave him water," he said, his voice rough but steady. "He was dying out there. I didn't know who he was. I just helped." The elder's gaze returned to him. There was no anger there, only gravity. One of the younger warriors emerged from behind the rocks, supporting the wounded man. A murmur rippled through the gathered tribe. The wounded man lifted his head weakly, his eyes finding the elder. He spoke, this time in his own tongue, and though the rancher could not understand the words, he felt their weight. The elder closed his eyes briefly, then placed a hand over his heart. The moment stretched, fragile as glass. Then the elder looked back at the rancher and did something unexpected. He raised his hand, not in threat but in respect. The rancher felt his knees weaken with relief he had not yet allowed himself to feel. He did not know it then, but that single act, offering water to a dying stranger, had set something ancient into motion, something that would return to his land with the sound of hooves and the weight of gratitude, changing his life forever.